Should we do our little intro now?
Of course. Why not?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to No One's a Critic, the best podcast ever, co-hosted by myself, Pure Kino, and Macabre Storytelling. And we're doing it live. We're like Bill O'Reilly. We're doing it live.
Sick reference, bro.
Yeah.
I remember when that was like back in, I want to say like 2016, 2015, when like there were like, I mean, it's still on, but like Bill O'Reilly clips were like all the rage
Oh,
because
yeah,
he was
yeah.
just such a train wreck on his show.
Whatever happened to that guy? He's not on Fox anymore, right?
No, I think he got kicked off for sexual harassment.
Maybe. Yeah. Huh. That was a long
Something
time
like
ago. But yeah, we should.
No spin news. Like,
Yeah,
fucking
fuck
dickhead.
that. Yeah. We should do a little intro of ourselves because this might be the first time. Because I'm always surprised that people like don't know about the podcast because I always post about it and they're like, "You have a podcast with Macabre." So I'm just figuring this out now. But yes, for those of you on Macstream who are watching, I am Pure Kino. I'm a film and television YouTuber, kind of mostly known for Sopranos stuff. Mac, you want to intro yourself a little bit?
Yes, I am Macabre Storytelling. I am also a YouTuber who does film and TV analysis, I guess. No Star Wars, though. So if you're here for that, please, God, no.
We could. I mean, we could do a 8-hour dissection of The Last Jedi or whatever. I never even seen any of those new. I saw the first of the new trilogy. I don't even remember what it was called.
Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens, and I've literally never watched one single Star Wars thing since then.
You don't have to.
No, it's
The shame is that like I think the original, the sequel trilogy, was. I think it actually did have a lot of potential. I do think there were some cool ideas presented, even in the final movie, which is like an absolute train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
However, at some point now, it's just all corporate schlock, and it's just like, okay, I don't even. There's like no.
I feel bad about that. Like I don't want to shit on because I understand it's like a very popular franchise and people have a lot of like fond memories and they want to really like it. Like for me, it's like it's easy to not give a shit about Star Wars because I don't really have it. I mean, I like the original movies and even the sequels to an extent, but I don't have that strong of a feeling. Like I'm not like a diehard fan. I don't buy merch or whatever. So I can understand. I mean, it probably sucks if you're a diehard fan of the thing, but for me, it's kind of easy to be like, yeah, fuck Star Wars. I'm not going to watch anything of theirs ever, basically.
Well, that's the same thing. Yeah. So same with me for Star Wars. Like I didn't watch them when I was like a kid, so it wasn't really like a big thing for me. Like there was no real nostalgia aspect. So I didn't watch them for the first time till I was like, I think in my teens or something. And I was like, oh, these are cool. These are fun. You know, same with Lord of the Rings, where I feel like it's, I think something that I've realized for a lot of people is like that they were like fundamental to like their childhood that like got them into cinema and whatnot. So I think that is sort of a hurdle that I had where I'm like, or same thing with Avatar: The Last Airbender. People that was like fundamental to people's childhoods. So going into it, I was like, oh, geez, this is like fundamental for you guys.
Is there any franchise, though, that you are like a diehard like fan of that you're like, I am deeply, deeply invested in this thing? Because I kind of don't have anything like that. I like the closest maybe is like Game of Thrones because I'm a really big fan of the books, but I'm also, I don't know, I'm not that diehard where I'm like it consumes my entire persona.
It's sort of weird where I actually think that as time goes on, so yeah, I think Game of Thrones may have been the closest. Like I was like really into it when it was on. And I mean I still am into the books whenever Winds of Winter comes out.
Yeah.
But probably one that was sort of like big for me was Breaking Bad. Like I was like really into Breaking Bad when it was airing. However, what's ironic is as time has gone on, as you know, I've kind of fallen out of. It's almost the opposite, where instead of like doubling down, like no, you can't. It's perfect. You can't criticize it at all. As time goes on, I almost become more and more disenchanted with it.
Hmm.
Where it's still a very good show. It's still a very um, uh, revel what's the influential show,
Yeah.
obviously. But yeah, as time goes on, I just kind of like I revisit it, and I'm just kind of like, oh, it just doesn't have the.
Yeah.
It isn't as impressive, especially compared to some other stuff that has come out since.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it has held up as much for me.
And there's a difference though too between like a show that you really like versus like a franchise. Like Star Wars is a franchise, right? It's not just one film series. It's video games, it's comic books, it's novels, and there's people who are really into all of that. Like I mean, there's other Breaking Bad media, but not really. Like I mean, like I'm
Not
obviously.
really,
I
yeah.
mean, we're both really into the Sopranos, but there's no Sopranos franchise, right? It's just the show and that one
I'm
disappointing movie, and that's it. There's not. I
I'm
mean, there are people who like. I don't know. They collect the Monopoly Sopranos game or whatever, but like that's kind of the extreme case.
I'm sorry. Do you have the fact that you have the balls to ignore the Sopranos PS2 game?
Oh
Okay,
yeah, you're right. Yes, you're right. I did a video. No,
listen.
I did a video on that back in the day. That is true. I wish there was more Sopranos like spin-off media. I'd be down for like a comic book or like a novelization series. That'd be sick.
Well, there was Many Saints of Newark, and that was kind of like okay,
That's fan
kind of
fiction.
disenchanted. That at least for me, I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
no,
we don't
that's.
need this, do we?
I don't care though. Like I said, I would have fun with it even if it sucks. Like I've made like 3 or 4 videos on the Many Saints of Newark. Like it as a Sopranos tuber, it provides me content. So I don't even care if they. I always joke about that. If they made like a woke like sequel to the Sopranos or whatever, like people always joke about that in the fandom. I was like, I wouldn't give a shit. Like go for it. I'll make a bunch of videos off it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, and I don't even know what that would look. That's sort of the thing with it. Is like I don't even know what I think
Meadow takes
because even
over as
like with
boss of the family.
or like even with like Game of Thrones, where I'm like it gets to the point where I'm like I enjoy House of the Dragon, but the other stories like what did or like one of the big ones I think we've talked about it before is like people are itching to see like oh they should make a Robert Trebellion
Mm-hmm.
miniseries, and it's like well why
Yeah.
like we know because in comparison to like the Dance of Dragons, it's like that is that's an interesting thing because like you have the broad strokes and now you're able to flesh it out and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like explain what exactly happened to characters and who there's a one of the like a major character in House of Dragon. No spoilers. Um, yeah, no like specific spoilers. One of the main characters in House of Dragon. Well, a lot of them die, but one of them dies. And in the book, I believe it's never revealed exactly who is
Mm-hmm.
responsible.
Yeah.
So I figure that's going to be elaborate. So that's kind of fun. Okay, so we can fill
Yeah.
in the details. But something like with Robert's Rebellion, it's like we know pretty much everything
Yeah.
about it. Like we can maybe fill it a little bit, but we pretty much know like 90 to
Yeah.
95% of what went down. So
Yeah.
I don't really see the yeah.
Yeah. I am worried about all the spin-offs they're doing. Like I don't know how many of them are going to be actually good. Like I will say I've been very pleasantly surprised that House of Dragon has been as good as it's been. Not to say that there's not problems. I've had my problems with the first few episodes of this last season, which we'll talk about, in another episode when the series is done. But
No, do it now.
you want to do it now?
I want to hear your shit takes. All
Um,
right?
well, let
No,
me
I'm
finish my
kidding.
thought real quick. I was saying that like I wonder though because they're planning on doing Dunk and Egg, which is a little prequel novelette series as a whole show. I wonder if they have enough content to really justify that. They're gonna do a 10,000 ships like Princess Nymeria, the founding of Dorne kind of thing. I wonder if they actually have enough content to justify that. I don't know what's happening with the Jon Snow sequel show. I don't know if that's been axed or not. I really don't know
Yeah,
what they're gonna
where
do.
I literally have not seen Kit Harington in like 6 years. So
Oh, you didn't watch him in what's that Gunpowder whatever the Guy Fawkes is a mini. It sucked.
Oh no, I didn't see Pompeii either,
I
which
don't.
that may have come out during.
Yeah, yeah. I think that did come
Yeah,
out there.
but
I don't want to be one of these like guys who insult short people, but like it was so it was so distracting
what?
how short he was in that, because he's supposed to be a
Oh,
father, and he's got this little boy, and the little boy is basically as tall as he is, and it was so distracting. I was like,
in Pompeii?
no,
Or
not
the
Pompeii, in Gunpowder.
Gunpowder. I haven't. I have to look at that. I haven't
And
heard
look,
of
I
that.
say this as a short guy too. Like it was so distracting. It almost never is an issue for me, but like, yeah, his like 5-year-old son was like up to his neck basically, and I'm like,
Oh.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to like the Harry Potter thing, where it's like it's just so difficult to separate them from, because like that's all you knew them from.
Yeah.
It's like these are it wasn't Daniel Radcliffe, it wasn't Rupert Grint, it wasn't Emma Watson, it was the characters.
And we grew up with Radcliffe, and,
Yeah.
and it's like it's really hard to see him as something. And he's done other stuff. Like he's tried to really push his career. Like he did
And I think
Horns.
he's done pretty well. Yeah.
He did that magician movie. He played the bad guy. Yeah, I mean he's a good actor. Like it's really hard when you had such a breakout role, but also he doesn't ever need to worry about money, right? Like he's still getting residuals off that. He's gonna be fine no matter what.
Yeah. They're fine.
Yeah, they're fine. Fuck actors complaining about, oh no, I mean millions of dollars. Fuck off.
I can't afford my major huge house anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you'll be okay.
Emma Watson has surprisingly been in not a lot of stuff, and you'd think she would be. Like I could understand Daniel and Rupert not really being able to branch out into other stuff, but Emma's very pretty. She's a very good actress. You'd think she could be in a lot of stuff, but I kind of think she also hadn't been really like focusing on it. Like she went to college, like she
Yeah, I
it seemed like
think
she was focused on
I
other
think
things.
I think she kind of purposely stepped away to some extent. I think she also spent more time focusing on like philanthropy,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So,
Didn't she do
and
something
I think
with the UN or something?
yeah, way back when. And I think that's another thing too, is like I think like I recognize that I probably myself am in like sort of a bubble where, because just recently Daniel Radcliffe won a Tony.
Oh yeah.
I forget for what. And then but he's been in some other stuff. He was in Equus way back when. So I think that's sort of on me for like, because I only sort of have a feel. I just kind of sometimes I'm aware of like plays or musicals.
I mean, if you're not on like Broadway, if you're not in New York, I don't know how you're supposed to like keep up with, unless they film it or something. Like you can't keep up with like who's doing what play or whatever. It's like it's a live performance. You can't see it unless you're there.
Well, that's been a big controversy over the years, where it's like theater has sort of hit this weird sticking point, because on one hand, the novelty of it, seeing it on Broadway and whatnot, I understand that there is a level of like exclusivity that makes it sort of prestigious, However, at the same time, it kind of alienates or, excludes. Because even like when I brought my mother to see Hamilton years back here in Chicago, and that wasn't the original Broadway cast. This was like years after it premiered. And it still costs like $180 a ticket.
Yeah.
And that is because we just so happen to live in Chicago too.
Yeah.
So if you want to see it, you would have to travel to one of these cities and then buy the ticket. It's like, that's a lot for. And after Hamilton, the recording came out in Disney Plus. It came out. Well, it didn't really come out. Like, this is common knowledge for theater people, but they actually do record them.
Yeah.
All of them, or at least one.
Yeah.
And they put them in they're in like this, I forget where, like in a library.
Yeah.
And they're there, but no one is allowed to see them. And it's
Yeah.
like, why don't you throw this on 5 years after its run, throw it on a streaming service, charge them $30 to watch it. I would do that. I don't understand what the...
Yeah, I think it's an exclusivity thing. I think it's like they know that they stand to make more from pushing people to, even though less people will do it, the tickets are so expensive that it pushes people to actually, no, let's go to Broadway for a New York trip and go watch Hamilton there. I saw I went to a live Hamilton show again, not the original cast. It's always hard for me. Like, the new cast does a good job or whatever, but I'm so used to hearing the voices from the album that when it's slightly different like that, it really bothers me. It just, again, it'd be like watching like The Sopranos, and it's a guy who kind of looks like Tony Soprano, but not really, and you're like, this is so weird. We got our Hamilton tickets for free, actually. We got an app. We had to like log in once a day.
Oh, did you win the lottery or whatever?
Yeah, like it's so funny. My wife, I gave up on doing it. We both did it like every day for like a month. And then I was like, fuck this, I'm never gonna win. And she kept doing it. And on the last day that she did it, she got it, and we ended up going. And it was cool. It was cool to see it live. But I also saw the Disney the recording they did, and that too was a little different because the recording is, because each performance is going to be slightly different than the album recording that they did originally. So it's like the timing is slightly off on some things, and it just, I've listened to the album so many times, it bothers me. But I understand that's just how it is.
Yeah, well, that's another thing too, is like, to your point about like the exclusivity thing, it's sort of like, I compare it to like going to like a music concert.
Yeah,
there's still a market for people who want to see it live, because that's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I don't know if that would that really cut into the profits of Broadway.
But I also think, most like, you know, live performance artists don't record their concerts and sell the video. They sell the album, which most musicals do too. They sell the music. Like, you can buy a CD or stream it or whatever. But I also don't think unlike like Taylor Swift's Era Tour, she did that obviously. But I mean, most like live performances, you can't really, like, unless someone uploads it to YouTube, they don't sell. I mean, maybe after the tour they sell a DVD or something, but I think that's more rare than normal.
Well, but just what I mean, like, in terms of like, even with the recording, like even with Hamilton on Disney Plus, I think there is still a market for people who would still be into seeing it live.
Oh, definitely.
Because even those two things can be different. And just to like see them in person, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's an experience, right? It's like you want
to
go down there, you want to get dressed up or whatever.
But I think you're right, where it's just like they're kind of like stuck in their ways and they're never going to budge, just because that's how it's always. I don't know, you have to be there, and it's like, okay, well, we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, we do acknowledge though that like putting something on streaming too fast can hurt. Like, I mean, that's been hurting movies a lot lately when they announce it's going to be on like live streaming like a few weeks after it comes out. It's like no one goes to watch it, right?
Well, what's so funny is that, it's funny you say that. So when the Bike Riders, I saw it actually last year at the Chicago Film Festival. Really good movie. But when it hit theaters, it didn't do very well. I think it had like a 70% drop on its second week. So that film, they're like, okay, we're going to put it on streaming, like, I think like 2 weeks after its theater release. Now, I disagree with that. I think that's stupid. But I kind of understand, like, oh, well, you know, if it had such a huge drop off, we might as well put it on streaming to, you know, try and salvage. However, A Quiet Place Day One was just released, and it did incredible. Let's see, the budget was $67 million. Yeah, it was released less than a week ago. Budget was $67 million. It's already made $109 million. And I think like it got its budget back in the opening weekend. It was like huge. It's already been announced that it's going to be on streaming in 3 weeks. Yeah. Which is very, like, that's where it's like, okay, what's going on here? Like, I understand in that case, okay, we're cutting our losses. We
Yeah.
don't want to keep this movie in theaters because it's not doing well. But here's a film that you're not even letting it get its like you're not even letting it get its legs. It's like, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, like HBO screwed over The Many Saints of Newark by debuting it simultaneously on HBO and then in theaters. Like no one went to see it. It was like, and I felt bad because I'm like it made like half its budget like in theaters, and I'm like, even though the movie was terrible, I wish it would have, like, just for David Chase's, like, you know, his record. Hey, he could have at least had a successful movie, even if like the audience score was bad or whatever. But like, it was just a complete abysmal failure, and it's because HBO's. And I understand it was during COVID, like that was a little bit more complicated. Like, you know, that was still in that window where people were like kind of iffy about going to a theater still. So I mean, it's complicated, but like, it is disappointing when it, and like I said, the business model of film is like really in a strange place right now. Like, is this gonna last long into the future? Are we still gonna be having this? Is it all gonna move to streaming or, you know, pay-per-view or whatever? I really don't know. I think we're in a transitionary period right now where what people want is different. A lot of people really don't like the theater experience anymore. Some people still really do. But a lot of people just don't want to pay the higher cost too of, like, you know, it's expensive nowadays if you want to get a ticket, if you want to get, you know, popcorn, drinks, whatever. It's a whole thing. And, you know, people are limiting themselves more and more because of the economy on that. So I really don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wish like they would like pick a lane, you know, because I from what I heard is like, you know, at one point what we'll do is streaming services will just be sort of like smaller independent pictures, and the cinemas will be like saved for like the big, you know, big features, like the big blockbusters. And it's like, okay, like even if that was the case, I still would want to go to see movies in theaters, even if it's like a smaller film. But it's like, okay, pick a lane.
Yeah.
Like, let's just decide. Because right now we're still in this, like you said, this transition period where we're like, we're not really sure of, are we gonna, and then it's even one thing where it's like, okay, put it on streaming, but charge people $20, like they did with Black Widow. It's like, people will pay that.
Yeah.
Didn't Trolls World Tour? I think that was during the pandemic. Trolls World Tour was released on streaming for like $20, and it made like an insane amount of money. Because, you know, parents at home,
get it for their kids.
They throw it on.
Yeah, I mean, it's also complicated because like theaters are like pressured of like which movies they show even too, right? Like, I think there was something about like Disney or Marvel or whatever was like had strict rules about how long they had to run their movies, so they couldn't turn over for newer films, because it's like, if you do this, we'll cut you off, and that's most of their money. Because unfortunately, you know, the vast majority of people go to see the big blockbusters like Marvel films or Disney films or whatever. So there's a whole, not politics isn't the right word, but there's a whole like other concerns about what movies they show, how long they run, what's the economics of all this stuff, and that's also why a lot of small theaters fail too, because they can't keep up with the big like AMC guys.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I recently saw we saw Longlegs, an early screening at the Music Box Theater here in Chicago, which was awesome. And then we saw Kinds of Kindness at Music Box, both on 35 millimeter. And it's just so cool. Like, I understand like some people just aren't into that. It's not really a big thing for them, but like something about seeing it in like a theater like that, and like I'm gonna sound like a complete like pretentious douche, but there is something about seeing it on like actual film.
Yeah.
I think Tarantino's a bit of he's a bit of like pretentious about it, but because like I think digital is fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't really like, it doesn't ruin the experience for me. But there is something to be said about how it just kind of like, there's just like the grain or something about it just sometimes like if the light flickers just
Yeah.
away, it just looks so cool. I don't know, but
I don't think you're pretentious for that. I mean, I feel the same way about like vinyl records and stuff. Like I know it's kind of cringy to be like, because I do collect vinyls and whatever, and like it's like, is the audio that much better? I actually don't think that's the main thing. I just think there's a whole vibe of like putting the vinyl on, listening to it, hearing that like slight crackle. Like I think the actual quality difference between vinyl and digital is very overrated. To your like, maybe there's a difference, but if you're actually just interested in hearing the music, I don't think it really matters. The same thing of film, but there's a whole vibe thing that like I appreciate that exists. I don't think we can build the whole industry around this one kind of niche vibe. But I like it, and I like going to small theaters. There's a small theater in my town that plays like a lot of old movies and indie movies and stuff like that, and I like to go there when I can. It's usually a lot cheaper too, which is nice. It's not as big, the seats aren't as nice, but again, there's a whole vibe to like being in a small little place like that I enjoy. I just think you can't expect the whole film industry to revolve around that one kind of niche, but it's still cool.
Yeah, something we really prefer too is because I think it was sort of after well, actually, I don't really know if it was the pandemic, but something we realized too is that we had a lot of bad experiences at like AMC's, like big theater chains, because when people would go to the movies, we kind of got a sense that like, when we're going to the movies, we're going to see the movie.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is like our thing. Whereas for other people, it kind of almost seemed like, there's always a group of like, just people who are like, kids who are just like have nothing to do, so they go to the movies, or just like, go to the movies like a family, like
yeah. It's
and the issue is that like it led to a lot of like, how what's the term? Poor theater etiquette.
Yeah.
Some people talking on their phones, and it just kind of is like a little annoying.
No, I hate that.
Whereas,
that's why I don't like going to theaters a lot of time. It's like it's noise. It's not a good experience. Like it's a good experience like to see it up there, and if you were the only one in the theater, it would be the perfect experience. But having all those distractions like takes away from just enjoying the film. And I saw some of my comments in my chat right now were talking about that, like how it's like they don't like that part of it.
Yeah, well, that's why our main theater now, it's a bit farther from our house, but it's Alamo Drafthouse. Because they're very strict about like if someone's talking or on their phone, like they'll kick that person out.
Yeah.
No refund. But then also to your point about like certain theaters, what I love about Music Box is that, are there like kind of like some pretentious film people there? Yeah, of course. I might even be one of them myself. But it's just like when we went to see Longlegs, that auditorium I think seats almost 1,000. I think. When the film was playing, not like you couldn't hear a pin drop, like because everyone there was there for the movie, and for the experience, and it just kind of was a different atmosphere.
Oh, definitely, yeah, it's way better.
Yeah. I actually don't know. I wonder what theater was seating.
I think again, like, I mean, pretentious film people are annoying on Twitter, but like in the theater, that's a way better experience. Like, to have people who are actually just interested there in the movie and are not being distracted, not talking, not being on their phone or whatever. I think that's just a way better movie going experience, but it's much more of a rarer experience. Like, again, the vast majority of like AMC's and stuff, it's blockbusters, it's people there, just looking for a good time, which nothing wrong with that, right? Like you pay your $10 or whatever, you're just there to have fun, totally fine. I don't want it ruined. That's why I just like, if I had a really good film I wanted to watch, I probably wouldn't watch it in a big theater, or I purposefully pick days that I know people are not going to be there, like on a Wednesday morning, I'll go watch it or something like that, like where no one's going to be in the theater. I can just enjoy it. That is although I will say, one of the best joys ever is going to a movie theater, being the only person in there. I got high one time, and I went to watch the Jungle Book live action version, and it was the middle of the day. I was the only person in there. It was awesome. I had my soda, I had my popcorn. I was like, this is fucking fantastic. The best experience in the world.
Um, Funny enough, well, I think you can do it at AMC too. But one thing we like about Alamo is they can, when you're selecting seats,
Hmm.
um, it like actually like shows you where everyone else is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I like that a lot. So you can be like, oh, this showing is kind of empty. That's kind of
Yeah.
nice. Like, yeah, let's go this time.
You always run the risk
Um,
though of like it's empty right now, but people buy it like right before the show starts or whatever. I'll do that where
yeah,
I'll purposely buy tickets that are like away from anyone, no one's in the same row or whatever, and then someone shows up and sits right next to me because they got the ticket last minute. And I'm like, ah, fuck.
that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Um, I'm always a person who sits on the end now, though, because I found that I have to usually use the bathroom at least once
Yeah,
or
yeah,
twice.
that sucks when you have to get up.
And especially at like Alamo or even like some AMC, that's not super bad because like with Alamo, it's um designed for like the waiters to walk for, so you can get up and walk easily. But at Music Box, it's pardon me, excuse me,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
sorry. It's like there's like literally like 2 inches in
Oh,
between
is that one of
seat
the
and the
you
front.
said waiters? Is that one of those movie theaters where you can like eat and drink in the
Yeah,
theater?
you can order food during
Okay,
it.
that's
Yeah.
I've never been to one of those. We have some where I'm at. I might check that out. I've never been to one of those like dine and watch movie kind of places.
The Almo's pretty good where it's like if you want food, so you can order before.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah.
people get there like 15 minutes before they order and then they have it for the movie. But one thing they do, which is nice, is that if you want more food, you like literally write it on a piece of paper and then there's a button on your seat and they'll come in and take it and then bring it out so they don't have to like order
Yeah,
during the
yeah.
movie. So it's a really good system. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'll try that.
yeah. It's good. It's fun for more like, Music Box. You can
Yeah,
get, I think
yeah.
they do have some food there, but like, you get popcorn and Coke. But if it's like more of like a lax film, we're like, okay, let's
Yeah.
go see this one. Why not?
Are you one of those people who like sneaks in food? Obviously not to that theater because you get it, but like on normal theater, are you sneaking
Oh
in
yeah.
stuff? And yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
We usually at most we always bring in candy or our own
Of
drinks,
course, yeah,
like a Coke.
yeah.
One time, uh, Melissa, my wife, she brought a tote bag and we snuck in full Chipotle bowls.
Hey,
At
Jesus
like because we
Christ.
went, it was like some AMC,
Yeah.
and it's like in a weird, it's here in Chicago downtown, and it's in like a weird area where like it's very I well, there was one time we went to see, remember that movie Beau is Afraid that came out?
No.
No. It was like, it's like a 3 hour like surrealist horror film, and there were like four people in the entire theater. One woman, one of, including me and my wife. So the only other two people, one of them left about 30 minutes in, and then the other was there. But when we got up to leave from the movie, he was asleep. So it was a very fun. That was a
Yeah.
very fun. We should have just brought in McDonald's.
Yeah.
I was like, why not?
We've done.
No one
I've
would have
done that. I
cared.
brought in McDonald's before, like chicken nuggets. I've never brought in stuff you need like a fork to eat at the. That's pretty. That's pretty ballsy. I like that. Um, yeah, the people bring in fast food. Like, yeah, it's great. It's a fun. Like, it's fun. Like, just trying to sneak stuff in. Uh, are you allowed to bring water bottles? Because we were debating that we wanted to bring like like a Hydro flask of water, and we didn't know. I also don't ever ask questions, but like I was wondering, like, is that allowed? Can you bring your own water in?
I think so. Or even if it's against the rules, I don't think the kids who work there getting
Yeah, it's
paid like
like
$10 an hour give a fuck. They're like, dude, I don't care.
the last theater we went to.
Right.
We went and saw Inside Out Part Two, which it was okay. It was a little. Even my wife was a little bit like, it's just like the first one. It's literally just Inside Out Part One again. Um, but there was no one even checking tickets, so you could just walk in and like just go watch it. But who cares?
No, because like those theaters, especially the AMC's, they're so big,
Yeah,
and you have like so few. Like they'll have like 8 concession stands, and even like on busy nights, or like they're only really full during like
yeah,
premiere nights, like midnight
yeah,
showings.
yeah,
Every time else, they're just like there's like one dude on,
yeah,
and that's it.
yeah. Are you one of those people also who like sneaks into other, like you pay for the one ticket, watch your movie, and then you just go to a different one and watch another one?
I've never done that. I haven't done that recently. I used to do that when I was younger. One time, me and my best friend here in Chicago, we did a double showing of Warrior
Mm-hmm.
and Moneyball when those two came out in 2011, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Both really good movies. So that was fun.
Yeah.
But no, I
It's
don't. I
harder
usually,
nowadays because the tickets are all like like you pick your specific seat, so you can't know
yeah,
whether that seat's taken. But we used to be, if like when it was just free seating, just sit down, right? Like no one will know whether
no one
you paid
cares.
for the ticket or not. You could always wait until the movie starts and then sit down, and then if someone shows up, you just like, oh, sorry, got the wrong seat, and just move to a different open one. Um, yeah, we did
It
that
was.
once. We snuck into like multiple movies.
It's funny you mention that because my home theater back in my hometown, it's weird where there. So like when you go in, there's like the ticket stand, there's the concession stand, and then there's three entrances, like theater 1 through 4, theater 5 through 9, theater 10 through
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
whatever. And there's three, and so they all look like they're far apart.
yeah, yeah.
So you could say like, oh, if I have a, if we have an R-rated movie and
Yeah.
I remember when The Departed came out in 2006. There were like cops standing all over because they didn't want like kids sneaking in to see
Oh,
it.
really?
Um, but what was funny is that when you go, so like let's say Departed's playing in theater 10, so like
Yeah.
way over here, and I go to like I buy a ticket for theater 1, it's over here. I go in. When you go in, if you go back far enough, they're all connected in the back
Mm-hmm.
openly. So
Oh,
you can
okay.
just go to the theater and just
Walk
walk all the way
around, yeah.
around, and it's like why even I didn't understand I guess it's like more for like so people can get around easier,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
workers. But I'm like this kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do here.
Well, like, you ever notice too how a lot of those theaters have doors that lead outside, like I guess for like emergencies or whatever, but
hmm
a lot of them don't have alarms or whatever. So I'd see people like leaving the theater, and I'm like, what you could do is you could just open the door and someone could just walk in, like your friend or whatever. Which I guess, I mean, I honestly think they don't care that much about like
I don't know
their
they care,
costs
yeah.
are fixed, right? It doesn't go up. It's not like stealing like food or whatever from a restaurant. It's like their costs are already fixed. Like you weren't gonna pay if you're gonna sneak in. You weren't gonna pay anyway, so they're not really losing anything. You don't want to encourage that, but like who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Someone asked a
And it's like yeah,
question.
I'm like whatever.
Someone
But
asked a question in chat since we're talking about movies or movie theater experience. Dinner before or after the movies? Which one do you prefer?
hmm. Well, I usually eat during at Alamo, but usually if we're going to see a movie before, I think.
I think before too. Like,
Yeah.
well,
Be
because
satisfied, then I can go
yeah,
and chill and sit down and
and also just thinking about the timing, right? Like, if you let's say it's a dinner and date movie, like a dinner and movie date, you know, just thinking about the time. If a movie's like let's say 2 hours long, right? That takes up a chunk of time, so you kind of want that to be at the end because you're gonna end the movie at like 10 or whatever. If you watch at
hmm
8, so you'd want to eat dinner beforehand, watch the movie. Although I always say like dinner and date is like one of the or I always dinner and a movie is like one of the worst like dates when you're early dating. Like you shouldn't go to a movie on like your first date. It's not like you're not
No.
actually like spending any time with the person. You just happen to be sitting next to someone for 2 hours, but there's no like interaction between the two of you. You know?
Well, see, I don't mind that. I think it can be a good date if it's something like if you're both like really into movies. So you can
Sure.
go see the movie and then after if you want to like talk about it, like
Yeah.
grab a drink or something, that
Yeah.
would be fine. But if it's just kind of like, I'm not gonna bring a chick to see like Wonka and like, so what did you think about the cinematography? Like, no, it's like that's not really what we're it's probably not gonna work out well.
Yeah.
Um
I just think that like
but
if you're trying to get to know someone or whatever,
yeah.
there's a lot better stuff to do than watching a movie.
Well, for me, it's the fact that it's such a time.
Yeah.
Like, it's like especially if it's like your first or second date, you don't really like know the vibe of this person. You're hanging out with them for like at least 3, if not
Yeah.
4 hours. It's like that seems like I've had dates that were like 45 minutes. We went to grab a drink, realized we didn't really like dig each other,
Yeah.
and then just say la vie.
What are some
Yeah, I
good
think
date
that's the issue.
ideas? The chat Homework 5 asks, "What are some good date ideas then? What's your go-to date?
I always grab a drink,
To grab a
always.
drink?
Or if you're not old enough for that, or if you're not really a drinker, just grab a coffee.
Coffee. I think that's
Just
the
go.
perfect first date because drinks, it's like, I mean, you could do it, but it's like there's a level of like we're gonna get intoxicated together, you know. Like if I was inviting a girl out from like Tinder or whatever, which is actually how I met my wife, by the way. It's like it's always coffee. Like let's go get a
Yeah.
coffee. It's a public space, you know. It's a good vibe. Um, but that's a first date though. Let's say you're like let's say you're not like I'm not married right now because anything is fine when you're married. But like let's say you've known this girl a little bit. You're taking her out. You want to kind of impress her. What's your like go to good date idea?
Hmm. I still wouldn't say dinner. That's just I don't know. It's just not like really my thing. I think the other thing too is like especially dudes. I think they try their to like impress a girl by like bringing her out to like a fancy dinner, but usually it just kind of makes things awkward. Like you're spending a lot. Like it's one thing is just get a burger or something,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. But like people try to do this like uh they try to like a fancy restaurant. It's like it's a little bit too much.
Yeah.
I think like bowling would be a fine one
Mm.
after on a second date. People complain about it like where you're like, oh, you don't interact because you bowl and then she bowls. It's like, yeah, but like you can talk
You're
in
talking in
between, and
between it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and you don't have to like. They've never been bowling. You don't have to like. Okay, you like if it's two people and you get like an hour, like there's plenty of time to like
Oh yeah, yeah.
you bowl. It's like okay, you can like talk for like a minute. You can
Yeah,
take
yeah.
like a 2 minute break. It's not a because like if you're me and my wife have gone bowling and like we would just like go one after the other. You can get like if it's only two people, you can like roll like at least three, if not four
Yeah,
games
yeah.
between two people. So there's plenty of downtime. I think that's a perfect one. It's fun, it's an
Yeah.
activity, you can talk, you can chat.
I think like a game type thing like that, either bowling or like mini golf or something like it's like a thing, right? It's like it's more than just going for a meal or whatever, and it's fun, and it's it's again it's like you're in a crowd, you're in a whole like it's a whole activity. So yeah, I think that's a good date idea.
Yeah,
I'm like a
I'm just
walk
like
guy. Like I like going on walks.
walks are fun.
Yeah. Like I mean,
People
like a
try to
public space, it's like downtown or in like a in like a party area or whatever. But like, um, yeah, I just like doing that.
people try to like complicate it. They're like, "Oh, I have to find the perfect bait to be clever on the date idea." It's like you're trying too hard. It's
Yeah.
if there's a vibe there, if you like each other, that's you can basically do whatever and it'll be
Yeah.
fine. Um, if you're trying to like think of like it's one thing to like you want to be creative to some extent, sure, but if you're putting too much effort into it, where it's like, oh, I have to think of something
Yeah.
really really clever, it's like you're something's already wrong in this
Yeah,
equation
I
here.
would do that more like into the relationship, like your anniversary or something. That's like the time to be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna plan a really creative thing or a really fancy thing or whatever. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I keep it more low key in general too, because it just I don't know. I think you come off cooler that way. I think you come off cooler if you're more like nonchalant, like not trying too hard. And I know maybe that's like a it's like maybe you shouldn't think that way, but I don't know. I think that most people are just like trying to act like they don't care as much. I mean for better or worse, that's just kind of that comes off a little cooler in general.
I think it's like the issue with it's not a matter of like I don't think like you shouldn't care. It's a matter is that a lot of dudes, particularly, they care or they try way too hard at the
Yeah.
beginning. And it just comes off as like they don't understand. They're like, "Well, I brought her flowers and brought her to this nice restaurant." It's like, "Whoa, bro, you just fucking met her."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
still, if she's like a girl you've seen a couple times and you really like her, then it's something where it's like, okay, now I'll do something nice for you because I want to actually like, you know, make this work and like actually put effort into it.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're just meeting, the problem is that for a lot of dudes, um, they have so few chances or
Mhm.
like So every time they meet a girl or get a date, they're like, "Oh shit, I have to make this work. This is it." And all they do is end up like fucking themselves over because they it's the desperation comes off in their
Yeah.
behavior, whether they know it or not, and it just kind of sabotages anything good.
Yeah, I don't. I know we talked about this before. We talked about like the dating scene going on in the world right now, but like I don't know where this is coming from that like guys can't get dates or can't get women or whatever anymore. It's like I've never felt that way, and I'm not like an alpha male. Like I'm not like tall. I'm not like, jacked or whatever. Like I don't I'm just wondering like if I've never felt like I can't find anyone. I don't understand why other people feel that way.
It's in my experience. Well, one, you're completely correct in the sense of like it's like, well, granted, like when we're talking a lot about like these sort of communities, like whether it's like incel or just kind of dudes who struggle with dating in general, red pill, a big thing to factor in is that the fact that the reason that you're exposed to that is because you're going online for this particular problem. So, for example, if I say, I'm trying to use an example. I'm losing hair. I'm gonna go on Reddit or like YouTube to try and find out why, or to like see what's going on. And then I join a Facebook group, and then I interact with all these other people who are losing hair. It's gonna give the impression that why are so many guys losing their hair? It's like, well, they're not really. Those are just the guys who are finding each other. Same thing with these sort of like the issue is that a lot of dudes who spend tons and tons and tons of time online, those dudes usually it's because they lack, so not always, but there is sort of correlation between like lacking social skills, not having a lot of romantic success. So of course they're gonna come across a lot of other guys who run into the same problems, and they're like, how come I don't run into like a Chad online, talking about Star Wars? And it's like, well, because he's probably out, fucking chicks, like or like dating or doing other stuff.
But again, I don't know.
I think that's the main issue.
This whole idea though too of like only Chads, get women only like I don't feel like a Chad. Like I genuinely don't.
Oh no.
But like I've never had trouble like, and I'm not saying I'm like there's limits, right? Like I can't go to a club, right? Pop off my shirt and have like 20 women, trying to touch me. That's not my vibe. I wouldn't succeed in that environment. But I've never been someone who's like, oh, I can't, meet someone on Tinder or whatever. I'm not like, I can't find anyone at all. Like, sure, there's lanes that I wouldn't succeed in, right? That's just not, that doesn't suit my natural abilities. But like in the areas where I do excel, I'm fine. I'm comfortable. And like, I don't know where I think this idea that people have of like only the top 1% of males will find any success in dating. It's like, that's ridiculous. Like you got to find the lane that works for you.
That's just all like online red pill incel cope. It's just dudes who they fail in dating for one reason or another. And in their defense, like to one of the main reasons, a lot to your point, like why these dudes kind of can't find their way forward, is because they really aren't given any sort of guidance. It's like, you take a dude who's like struggling with women. It's like, well, what option? And this is why a lot of dudes end up falling into like pickup and red pill shit, is because like, is it really cringy and like dumb and toxic? Yes. Is there really anything else like mainstream that guys can kind of like, if you're like a 20-year-old dude and you want to learn how to get laid or like, try and like get better with girls, is there anything else really out there? It's like very few. Like, because like most like dating advice or seminars, it's targeted more for like older people, or not really older people, but like, people who are like looking to like really settle down, or kind of find a partner for life, which some people are, but like most 20-year-old dudes are like, I just want to try to get laid, I just want to like flirt with girls at parties. And in that respect, there's very little. But then they go online and then they run into other dudes who are having the same problems, and then they convince themselves that women are all Satan, and then they just keep and that's a perfect example, like you said. It went from like the top 20% of dudes are getting all the pussy, then the top 10%. Now it's the 0.01% of alpha chads, and it's like, I don't think that's true, bro. Like I think you're bringing this to a little bit of an extreme.
I think people are also like way too scared of like rejection or like failure. Like they or when it happens, they take it as such like a personal like thing. Like I'm never gonna do this again kind of thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's completely natural to fail. Like it's completely natural to like, oh, you know, you were interested in this girl, you asked her out, she doesn't like you that way. It's like, it's not. It doesn't mean you're a fucking lose. Like people linger on their like failures so much, and they convince themselves it's some bigger issue where it's just like, no, you know, you like this person, they didn't like you, it didn't work out, like just, you know, move on. I think I think that extends a lot, not just dating too. I think a lot of people like linger way too much on failure. I think social media is a problem because of that, because they see all the success and they're like, oh, everyone's successful all the time, and it's like, no, everyone's a failure 90% of the time. It's just you keep going, you pick yourself up and you do it again, and eventually you succeed. And it doesn't, all those failure attempts don't matter, but people view it as like, if I strike out once, I'm a loser. And it's like, no, who gives a shit?
Another thing too is like, and this is sort of why it's so hard to sort of start. It's very similar to like getting a job. How do you get a job? Well, you need experience. Well, how do you get experience? It's like, well, you need a job. The beginning is always the hardest.
Yeah.
So if you take a dude who like, you know, like I'm at a point in my life where obviously you and I are both, you know, with partners.
Yeah.
But if you and I went back out into the dating field, I could go to a bar and get shot down by 10 chicks and it wouldn't faze me at all. Like, cause like, I went through that whole phase of my life. I'm so used to like getting rejected and blown the fuck out. However, when I was younger and before I had any success, every time I would get blown out or rejected by a girl, and this is before I had any real dating success, the first time you get rejected by one girl, it basically is all women rejecting you because you have no good experiences to draw upon.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you, I've known some guys who have like, they got like laid like twice in their life, and it completely changed because now they go out and they hit on a girl and they get rejected, but then in the back of their mind they're like, oh, but I got laid that one time. So but if you take a guy who has never had any success, rejection to him is like, it's just like soul crushing.
Yeah.
But to your point, well, then how do you get better at talking to girls? You have to get rejected 100 times, and it's like, it's a kind of a catch-22 in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, I can acknowledge that. That's probably difficult. I don't know how I got over that when I was younger, but I don't know. There's some people who just naturally don't care as much. Like, things just don't affect. Like, I have friends who, like, when something goes wrong, like, they just, like, they get depressed, they get whatever. Like, it hits them really hard. Whereas I've always been someone who's just like, oh, something failed, something didn't work out, whatever, it's okay. Like, and I don't know, that might just be like a natural like thing where it's just like some people have stronger emotions. I'm kind of emotionally dead like 90% of the time where I don't feel anything, which is good and bad. I will say it's good and bad, but
it's good and bad.
It's nice that things don't like, oh, I lost my job or whatever. Okay, I'll find another one. It's not a big deal. But other people like crushing.
Well, to that point, that's another good example where it's like, I remember when I lost my first job, I think I got laid off or fired. I forget. But I remember it was like it was like the first time that ever happened to me. And it was like, oh my God, what the fuck? It's very similar to like your first breakup. Where you're like, this is the end of the world. But then I got laid off. I either quit or got laid off from like several other jobs over the course of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I got laid off. That was sort of weird now that you mention it. When I got laid off from the job I had before I worked at the bar, I was working at a real estate place, and it shut down due to COVID. I was like weirdly okay with it. I kind of was just like, I think in part was because like it wasn't like a me thing. It was obviously like a nationwide, worldwide thing. And I knew other people were going through it. I don't know. It just I think just because I had been through that experience
Yeah.
before, and I was like, oh, I didn't die.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, again, and that's the same thing with women. It's like, oh, I got rejected,
Mm-hmm.
and then 10 minutes later, you're fine.
Yeah.
So many guys think that like if I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
rejected, it's gonna be the end of the world. It's like no, you're gonna go to a club, you're gonna ask a girl out, she's
Yeah,
gonna say
yeah.
no. 10 minutes later, you're gonna completely forget about it.
Yeah,
It's not a big deal.
you need that experience and that context to kind of know that, and that is hard. I mean, you gotta spend your time getting that at first. But I mean, that's just part of the maturing process. I think you just everything kind of with experience evens out. It doesn't affect you as much. I actually started my YouTube channel when I got laid. I got laid off during COVID too, like a lot of people did, and that's what started my channel. So good things can come out of like I said, good things can come out of failure. So I always tend to be like, yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah, but it's like it's difficult though because then I have to keep in mind if I'm talking to a guy that is like only ever failed with like chicks and is in life and he's gotten rejected every single time, never had any success, never even been kissed. It's like, okay, I have to be a bit
Yeah.
more empathetic to that. I have to kind of take that I have to take that mindset into account.
Yeah, and I also acknowledge that like there's a level of like there are people who have disabilities isn't the right word, but they have stuff going against them that's a lot harder to overcome than just being like inexperienced and young or whatever. Like,
Oh, of course.
yeah,
People on the spectrum or
yeah,
even if they're like on the much shorter because
or
like
they're
well
just
that's the
really
thing why I
ugly
try
or
to
something, and it's like, yeah, I mean that
yeah
is gonna hurt you a little bit. Like it's not insurmountable, but like yeah, you have a tougher time than other people who are just don't know what they're doing. It's like life's unfair, right? That's just how it is.
um or just it's I think that's the issue though like when people ask like it's like oh you're saying looks don't matter it's like looks matter
Oh
but it's just not nearly as much as a lot of guys who say that think because like so like if I were to say it's like hey if you're a dude all else the same a dude who is 6'1" is gonna have a lot easier time dating than a guy who's like 5'7".
yeah.
That's just a fact. However, I would say that the effect, like how much is it going to affect everything, all things considered? Probably not as much as most people think. Is the 6'1" guy going to do better? Probably.
Oh yeah.
Is he going to do astronomically better? Not usually. Probably not. Especially considering like if you have like charisma,
Yeah.
if you just have the balls to like ask a girl out,
Yeah.
you're gonna get far. The problem is that like dudes online think that like the difference between a dude who's 6'1" and 5'11" is like 99% of your options in the dating field are gone. And it's like, okay, looks matter, but just you're putting so much stock into like, or that's why like you get the memes where it's like, it's like, well, if I had a centimeter of bone right here and my jawline was popping, it's like, bro, you need to like chill. You need to get off the line, like
It's
calm the fuck down.
It's like there are people who will reject you for not being a certain height or not looking a certain way or whatever, but there's other people who won't, and it's like I think people focus on the fact that like this group won't accept me, and they focus all on that versus okay, well let me find someone who will accept me in this group over here. So it's like I think again people focus way too much on the rejection and the failure versus like okay this didn't work out. Like I'm not tall. Like I said I'm 5'7". Like I'm not like there's girls who won't date me for my height or whatever, but it doesn't bother me. There's other people who will. You just get over it.
Yeah. And also then of course again it's difficult because it's like telling a guy who has had no success this is difficult. But it's like, well, if she's gonna reject you for that, do you really want to date her anyway?
Yeah.
But again, telling that to a dude who has never had any success in his life, it's very difficult. I know we're coming up on our hour and we need to wrap up. However, I would just ask for, we don't have to do all of it. We can wait until the season's done. But I would love, can you give me one? What is your biggest gripe with House of the Dragon so far?
We can keep going
I've heard
too.
Some...
I mean, I don't care. We can keep going longer. This is a special episode, but yeah, we'll talk about House of the Dragon. Okay.
Or like just because I think I agree with some, but then it seems like others are like I don't know. There's some critiques where I'm like I don't really understand what the critique is. But
There's two things I don't like so far. One, the biggest thing is I don't like how much they're making the story accidental. I understand thematically what they're trying to do. They're trying to be like history is wrong, like it's written by the victors, and like a lot. It's like Forrest Gump, right? A lot of the stuff that we attribute to like intentionality is actually the result of accident. It's like real history, and I understand their point with that, but from an entertainment perspective, I don't love how everything is going to be an accident. I made this joke recently that like I guarantee you, and this is spoilers for House of the Dragon, so if you don't want any spoilers, don't listen. I almost guarantee they're not gonna have Aegon roast Rhaenyra with Sunfire. I almost guarantee that like she's gonna die by some other means, or she's going to take her own life or something, and then he'll roast her corpse or something, and it'll be propaganda that got recorded as real history, and they're taking a lot of the dramatic beats from Fire and Blood and making them more accidental to make a point that I find less entertaining.
I understand what you're saying. I will say to some extent I do agree. However, I do think that is going to change next episode. Spoilers for House of the Dragon, or I guess people who haven't read the lore, but like next episode is just based off of what people have said about the episode and based off of the title of the episode.
What's it called?
This is it's going to be a very big turning point.
What's the episode called?
And particularly, wait, what?
What's the episode called?
I think the Dance of Dragons.
Oh, really?
So it's it's a very, and I'm actually a bit surprised that what I think might happen next episode is going to happen so soon.
Yeah.
But from everything I've seen, I think what's going to happen is going to happen. And this is where things are going to take a very, very big turn. Especially considering the end of the most previous episode where again, spoilers, but Rhaenyra has... that was a great scene at the end with her and Alicent. There's that funny beat where she's like... I could call the guards. It's like, not before I kill you.
Yeah.
And then what? She's like, okay, hang on. We got off on the wrong foot here.
I really don't like that scene. It strikes me like season 8 of Game of Thrones when where Tyrion sneaks into King's Landing, and it's in order to facilitate a conversation the writers want the characters to have. It doesn't feel natural to me that these two would be talking. I get the point the writers are trying to make, where it's like it's one last chance to end the violence before it spirals out of control, but it feels very like they wrote this beat to happen rather than it's a natural thing that Rhaenyra sneaks back into the city to talk with Alicent, who just happens to be going to the Sept that very day, that very moment. It feels too forced to me. It didn't feel like a natural story beat.
Yeah, but she knew because the other girl, I think Selyse, knows that that's part of her routine.
Yeah, but
regardless, I think to an extent, I think it is a little bit like, I think it does stretch a little bit of credibility where, well, it's weird because on one hand, it's like, that is something that I've heard come up in relation to a lot, where it's like, I actually think this was sort of like an issue in the Game of Thrones show, where in the books, the fact that people had no idea what the fuck other people looked like was actually a very big deal. Mm-hmm. For example, in Storm of Swords, Barristan and Selmy, he was traveling with, and again, this isn't just like any random dude. This is like one of the highest guys in the Kingsguard for like decades. And she didn't even know, and none of her like consorts or people knew what the fuck he looked like, because why would they know what these people look like? Mm-hmm. Whereas in the show there were some times, and again, it's difficult because you can't there's no that suspension of disbelief for the reader as there is in the books. So they're like, aha, you're Jaime Lannister, and it's like, how the fuck do you know what this guy looks like? Even if you like have heard what he looks like. I saw him at the tourney one time. It's like, there's no way. But it's like, we understand. So on one hand, it's weird because I'm like, when I see like Rhaenyra or Daemon just kind of like trots it around King's Landing, you're like, oh, well, how does no one see them? But on the other hand, it's like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, like, A, none of them probably even know what the hell she looks like. And B, like, it's such a big city. Like, I'm walking in New York City.
Yeah, yeah.
Is someone going to randomly see someone?
Yeah. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, it didn't feel like a natural story consequence. And it isn't, because that's not from the books. In fact, one of the inventions of the show is Rhaenyra and Alicent's friendship. In the books, they're not close at all. I think Alicent's like older than Rhaenyra. They don't have a relationship before the dance, so they're inventing this, and I think it works. It's good to give them more of a backstory. Alicent has more to do because of this. That's why they also gave her that relationship with Kristen Cole. That I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is really adding, but like it's something for them to both do.
I think to your point, I think from one of our previous conversations, we were talking about how they're going to handle Rhaenyra. And to be fair, I actually thought that I kind of saw what you were talking about in the first few episodes, where it did kind of seem like Rhaenyra was like almost being too reasonable. Where like she's almost being like, because especially considering what is going to happen and how
she's literally a nun
like,
in this last scene. She's the nun against Alicent being just,
But on one hand, it's like you have to sort of, you can't just like jump into it. You have to build up to it. I think next episode is going to be the linchpin.
I think so too. But it's very interesting. I watched the teaser for the next episode, and I actually haven't been watching the teasers for the most part. But this one, they have this thing where Rhaenyra, she has a line. I don't know the context of it yet, but she has a line basically being like, the things that I'm about to do, like the horrors I'm about to unleash, are for the good of the realm. Because they establish in this that Rhaenyra knows about the Song of Ice and Fire. She kind of knows the White Walker threat's coming, and so what's one possible way they could go about this is, instead of her being like power obsessed and a tyrant just because she's a shitty person, the reason she'll become power obsessed and a tyrant is because she knows this is the only way to protect the realm is by uniting it under her to be ready for the White Walkers when they come. So that could be an interesting angle that they take her character. It's like she's not evil for evil's sake. It's justified in her mind because she's doing what she has to protect the realm. I don't know if they're actually going to do that. That might just be copium on my part, that like I'm imagining the storyline they're going to do. They have been really, really nice to Rhaenyra so far in the story. It doesn't bode well. I've not seen hints that they will show her darker side yet, but I'm prepared to be open to it next episode, depending on how things go.
I think next episode is when, because this, at the end of the previous episode, it basically was like she was still holding on to the hope that like, no, if we just, it was a misunderstanding, we can resolve this. And then Alicent, and to like Alicent's credit, like I think a lot of people were hating on her for that.
I don't understand why people were memeing on her for being like, Alicent's so dumb. Why didn't she know about the story of? It's like, if Viserys didn't tell anyone the story besides Rhaenyra, how the fuck was she supposed to know that?
Yeah, and I even saw someone argue that, and I actually think it was correct, where, and to your point, ironically, I actually think that Viserys' deathbed, speech about Aegon, where that Alicent misinterpreted, I actually think that makes, because like one person mentioned that Alicent technically had enough motivation just by believing. There's a scene where she like goes to Aegon and is like, Rhaenyra can't take power because even if I trust her with every, bone in my body, you are a threat to her.
Yeah, no, that's part of the motivation.
Yeah, well, especially because the Daemon's running around.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I trust Rhaenyra. I don't trust that fuck Daemon. But then, so that's enough. But then with Viserys' deathbed, what he says, it almost kind of, because like Alicent did generally believe that is what Viserys thought. That is what she generally. I do think like Rhaenyra was correct. It's like, so you're saying he's like all about me all the way up until like his like the second of his death, where he may not even have been lucid.
Yeah,
and it's like But that was an instance where I think the writers were trying to make Allison more,
yeah.
almost give her like not a free pass, but like an almost plausible deniability
No,
of like, no, she really thought she was doing the right thing.
No, I think they have portrayed the Greens better. Like, everyone is better in this show than they are in the books. Like, in the books, the Greens and the Blacks are both awful. There's nothing really redeemable about either side. They've made Aegon better. Like, he's trying. Like, is he a shithead? Yeah, but like he's got some sparks of like he's not overtly cruel yet.
I might actually say that he is one of my surprisingly favorite characters of the season, in the sense that they make him at one moment a character that I fucking despise, and he's such a little brat. But then there's also these moments of like, you know, I even got a little bit emotional when after the end of episode 1, his reaction, I was like, why am I feeling for this fucking little punk?
Yeah.
Like, I shouldn't be, but I do.
Yeah, no, they have portrayed them a lot better. You know what I thought was the case, and it turns out not to be true because from the director or whatever. But like, I thought Viserys was talking about Jon Snow. Like, I thought he had a dragon dream showing him Jon Snow in the future. Because remember, Jon's name in season 8 is Aegon, which is stupid for a number of reasons. Because they already had an Aegon, but turns out he was talking about Aegon the Conqueror. But I was like, how cool would that have been if he had a vision of Jon Snow in the future?
Yeah. All right. Oh, did the directors confirm? Because I was gonna say like maybe he was, and that's. What
I saw the director said he was talking about Aegon the Conqueror.
The Conqueror. Okay.
Which I was like, you missed a little opportunity there, but whatever, it's still cool.
Well, so what I was talking about was how a lot of people seem to like. They sort of like felt that like Alicent's reaction to, and again we'll have to see what her like full reaction is next episode, how she reeled with it, but I think a lot of people were very uncharitable in the sense that they kind of framed it as if she was saying like, when at the end when she was like, it doesn't matter now, she was like almost like refusing to take responsibility for her mistake. I don't really think that's what was, again we'll have to see next episode. I think she genuinely is like, it just hit her that like, oh fuck, I made a mistake, but so much has already happened, it doesn't matter.
I don't know what people,
and she's correct.
I don't know what people expect. Like, there's no situation where these two like come together.
What are you? There's no way, guys. It's like it's over.
It's like it's telling one side you should kill yourself in order to have peace. It's like that's just not a reasonable thing to, like, no one is gonna do that. That's just not gonna happen.
I think I think that's why I think a lot of people, and this is kind of where we get into what we were talking about, the sort of like Hollywoodification, not necessarily by the show, but by like the viewers, where a lot of people were like, oh, Rhaenyra is such a good person that she wants to like try to make peace. But I think even the writers understand in the show that like is that like admirable? Yes. Is it incredibly naive?
Yeah,
absolutely. She's almost like in denial, where she's like, Rhaenyra, what are you thinking?
It's like,
she's like, there's no way.
It reminded me of like Tyrion in season 8 telling Daenerys like, you had to conquer the 7 kingdoms without killing anyone, and it's like, what the fuck, Tyrion? This is not how the world works. Like, you are not going to.
What if you just asked for forgiveness? It's like, bro, she's done a lot of shit.
Show them mercy, and it's like, no, it's like, this is war. This is shit's. People are gonna die. Like, stop acting like this is moral.
And what's frustrating is that, like, at least with Rhaenyra, I can understand that, like, they're kind of building up that she's still naive, and then she's eventually gonna have that snuffed out. Tyrion had no, like, Tyrion, you've been a cynical bastard since the beginning. There's no reason you should be this like optimistic.
And it's so frustrating too, because Tyrion in the books is a lot darker, and it's like Tyrion would not advocate for peace; he'd advocate for war. They just wanted Peter Dinklage to look really good because he's the fan favorite, and we'll have to see if they overcome that in this show. I will give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll see next episode how it goes. But
I really think next episode is going to be the linchpin. I think that's going to be the one where, however the rest of the series is going to play out, it's going. I mean, like, again, I might be wrong that what's going to happen next episode is going to happen. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be, you know what? Yeah. And I think that is going to be where it all sort of
It will be a
be.
turning point because that's the halfway point of the season. I was also complaining about the
Yeah.
pacing a little bit, how slow it's been, and people were like, "No, you just gotta give it time." My one drawback to that is this is not a 10 episode season. Like we
For 8, yeah.
we are halfway through before the battle is even happened. Like I said, it could work. We'll give it a chance. We'll see how it goes. But because of the shorter nature of the season, we kind of need to pick things up a little bit here. I don't know how far they're going to go. I think 4 seasons is what they're aiming for now.
Maybe even. So I was thinking about that, considering if, again, I might be completely wrong, but if what I think is going to happen next episode happens, I almost wonder if they could do it in 3.
I don't know. I think there's too many events for
Maybe?
them to,
Okay.
because we had to have Rhaenyra take King's Landing, which I think probably will be the season finale. I think she'll take it. We got to have time with her ruling there as a tyrant. We have to have the battle over the God's Eye, which is, I don't think that's next episode. That's going to be later on. There's got to be Aegon with Sunfire versus Rhaenyra at Dragonstone. There's got to be the aftermath where Cregan Stark marches south with the Northmen. Like there's pacing things that I think it's got to be 4 at least. Which that the drawback of 4 too is like there was already a 2-year gap between season 1 and 2. If we go 4 seasons, we're not going to have the end of this show till like 2028. Like,
sorry. You meant in between the seasons. I thought you meant like in the timeline. It actually fucked me up because I didn't realize because it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that episode 1 of season 2 takes place like a couple
of
days,
weeks,
not
like
even
a week, yeah.
after. And I'm like, holy fuck!
It
like,
looks so different. The kids look so different now. It's like,
and it's just been so long. You expected there to be, because in Game of Thrones, that's kind of how it was in between the seasons. We get the sense that like a while has passed,
yeah.
like something, yeah. But in this, it's just like, no, this is like 2 days later.
And
I'm like, oh shit.
I worry too because the longer the show goes on, the more and more CGI they need for dragons, because the more dragon battles are gonna happen. And I think we could probably expect 2 years between each season, like just based on how things are going.
I think that's another thing too, and I don't think this is really fair. And this is usually why I understand going from like, if I'm just looking at the episodes in and of themselves, I would agree with the pacing issues. However, it's difficult for me because I know where it all leads.
Yeah.
So when I'm watching the first 3 episodes, I understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
I understand why they're doing this. I understand why they're setting this up. I understand. So even though it seems like to a viewer, it's like, it doesn't really seem like much is happening. And I'm like, yeah, but it is.
Yeah.
But I understand that, like, especially compared to like, I would say it reminds me a lot of like, not as a comparison, but kind of like The Wire.
Yeah.
Where like per each individual episode, does like anything major happen? In a few, but not in every single one. But then when you step back and look, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I think because, and then to your point, because it's only 8 episodes and because it's such like a high budget prestige show, I think people are expecting more oomph episode to episode. Yeah. Even because that was a big controversy for the last episode. There was no Battle of the Mill, which I was okay with.
I was fine with it too. It was very the
Yeah.
shot they showed of all the dead bodies was very effective. It was
a
way,
lot of people were pissy about that.
It was way better than when Game of Thrones skipped battle scenes because they would just do like fade to black, which is terrible. But this one, I thought that shot conveyed the thing really well.
Very, very well done.
I want to keep talking. Give me 1 sec. I use the bathroom, but you can entertain the chat while I'm gone.
Yeah. So listen, you Star Wars. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. If I apologize in the future if anyone ever wants to. I know, me too, Shashan. It's I just kind of like one of me and my wife's favorite thing was whenever we would watch like Succession or Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. It was just looking up the memes afterwards on Twitter. It's because like people are so funny with them. They're so fucking funny. Succession especially, that was like half of our enjoyment of the show was like people making memes out of the show, oh my god, they were funny. It was almost more enjoyable sometimes than the show itself, because people are really, really clever with that stuff, and they're so quick. I granted, I imagine they probably have stuff like primed and ready to go, but like it's amazing where I'm like, I get off watching the episode and people have already made like dozens of memes about creative memes about the event of the episode. I'm like, holy shit, you guys are great at this. I can't do that. I can think of ones like after the fact, but doing it on the spot like that is like very. I'm jealous of that. I wish I could be someone like that. Yeah. So I'm glad for House of the Dragon again. Yeah, but apologies if you ever do want Star Wars. I know a while back, I think I mentioned I would do a Star Wars rewrite, sequel trilogy rewrite. I unfortunately have no interest in ever doing that. It's a shame too, because I actually think it could be interesting. I think there was a lot of potential, but it's just never going to happen. Kino, I was just saying. Oh wait, he doesn't have headphones on.
I'm back.
Kino, I was just saying how someone mentioned like it's fun just to have like discussions again about the shows. One of my favorite things about House of the Dragon is just watching Twitter memes after the episodes. People are like so. I was saying I'm jealous of them because like people are so quick and they're so creative with that. I can't do that. I have to like. Takes me forever to think up those old like Game of Thrones Sopranos memes I would do. Takes me forever to think that shit up. I can't do it on the fly.
No, people being a part of the community is fun when a show is like going on, especially a popular one like this. I wanted to address the chat real quick because I saw some questions for us. One from Bully Whispers. I had a Bully Whispers, another well-known Sopranos YouTuber. He asked like, how far do we think the series will go? Like, will it continue past the dance into other Targaryen storylines?
I've heard that. I really hope it doesn't.
I don't think it will.
Yeah, I think that they're just going to, because one person mentioned like, well, why is it called if it's called House of the Dragon, they can sort of, well, one of the early theories was that the series would be like 10 seasons, but each season would be like a chapter of, so like we'd have like Rhaenyra, and then the last one would be Robert's Rebellion with the Mad King. I
don't think they'll do that. I think if they wanted to do more shows, they would split them off into their own shows so they can market them differently. Like it's hard to market a show as like season 8 of House of the Dragon. It's like a fundamentally different story versus, well, we'll just make a Robert's Rebellion show and we'll sell a bunch of merch and stuff for it.
That's kind of why I think The Crown is stupid, where it's like,
we're going to fight about that.
Okay. From what I've seen, and to my understanding, it's like, it's not like it jumps in time to like different eras of the royal family, right?
Yes. Every 2 seasons, the cast changes as they enter their new era. But I love The Crown. I think that's the best show Netflix has ever done, is The Crown.
Okay, maybe I'll have to give it like another go and just watch the whole thing.
I was gonna make a video about it actually, because it's such a, I don't know, it's one of those, it's kind of boring. Like, I'll be honest, a lot of the problems in the show are like very like first world problem type things, but I think they do a really good job of like getting you in the mindset of this very weird family, this very like, the situation the royals are in is so weird. But I love The Crown.
Okay, maybe I'll give it another shot at some point.
Yeah, that was very good. I guess someone said I'm tripping right now, so I think I'm alone. I don't think most people like The Crown, but I actually think in terms of consistency, because we talked about this before, like the Netflix problem where they'll have a really good first season and it just goes to shit from there. I thought The Crown was very consistent. Like, I like the later seasons almost more than the first season. The only one that kind of sucks is the last one. I thought they kind of ran out of steam towards the end of the show, but no, I like it. But there was some, bringing it back to House of the Dragon, there was some talk about like, are they going to do Aegon the Conqueror? I don't know if that's confirmed. Andre in my chat says they want to make Aegon the Conqueror next, but I feel like if they do that, just make a show called, you know, the Game of Thrones The Conquest or whatever. Like I don't know if you'd want to necessarily call it House of the Dragon season 5, but it's a prequel to the first 4 seasons.
I don't think. Like, I wonder if they're going to be tempted that due to the title of the show, House of the Dragon. Because
they could do it like True Detective a little bit, where they do like Night Country. You know, like it's like a separate season with its own title. But I'm
like, at this point, I'm just like, just do House of the Dragon, and then if you want to do a bunch more of the Targaryens, just think of other names for them.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be kind of so confusing. It would be like, it's kind of like, I guess like you could say that like. Well, no, that's not a good comparison. I was going to say it's like, I guess you could say it's kind of like, you know, like if I'm watching Dragon Ball Z, there's like the Frieza saga, there's the Cell saga, I guess. But this is like we're jumping like decades, if not hundreds of years around. It's like, and then, yeah, like you said, like not only going forward, but like we're going to go back a season to Aegon the Conqueror. It's like, that's, no, just finish the Rhaenyra arc and move on.
The one that could work if they move forward is the Blackfire stuff. But the problem is there's a whole generation between the dance and the Blackfire stuff where I don't think the reign of like Aegon the Third and Viserys the Second is really that interesting. Like, yeah, you have like them trying to conquer Dorne that doesn't work out, but I don't think there's as much drama as there is in the dance to justify a whole TV show. I think people would be like bored. If they skipped ahead to the Blackfires, I think there is like some storylines they could do about another Targaryen civil war, but I don't know if a time skip of that long would be like, oh, guys, it's 100 years later, and it's like, I don't know. I think audiences would get confused. I think if you want to make new shows, I would just make it as a new show.
Yeah, I kind of hope they don't go that direction because then it's gonna get messy.
Also,
like,
they're
okay,
doing
then you
too
have
much
another
stuff too. Like Dunkin' Egg is his own fucking show that's filming right now, so they have to focus on that first. That's gonna be. If they keep to their plan and they actually do the whole thing, that's like 7 seasons. Like, what the fuck?
I almost wonder if they are going to, and that's sort of like the issue with. We've already seen it with House of the Dragon, which I'm not a huge fan of. I wonder if they're going to feel pressured where if they do another couple prequels, even Dunkin' Egg, if they're going to try hard to really fit it into like the show lore, like they're not just going to let the story stand for itself, but they're going to be like, it's all connected and this like matters. And like, kind of like you were saying about like Rhaenyra, and is the White Walker thing going to play a role and it's going to affect, is she going to see a vision and then it's going to like change shit? And it's like, I think you guys will be best.
It's like you're trying too hard to like make it something it's not, and it ultimately can't pay off because it doesn't pay off till Game of Thrones. So it's like Rhaenyra's not going to fight the White Walkers, right? It's not going to happen.
And then it doesn't pay off because it was a bad ending. So it's like you should leave that behind as much as you can.
Yeah.
I
mean, like, it's interesting. Like, it's interesting that if that's her motivation, but I don't think they can pay it off well given the limitations of the lore.
You know, what would be my worst nightmare is at like spoilers for House of the Dragon. We'll put spoiler warnings, but it's like right before Rhaenyra's about to be killed, she like sees a vision of like Jon like defeating the White Walkers, and she's like, we've done it. And then she died, and it's like, oh my god, I'd fucking die.
I mean, yeah, in that situation, like, it's like, well, this whole war was essentially to birth Jon Snow. That's what you're saying. Like, I don't know. I think it's stupid to take it that far and try to connect it. Like, I think just having the motivations is enough. Because they have this kind of theme that, like, the Targaryens destroyed themselves with prophecy. That, like, their obsession with prophecy and stuff, like, undermine their own thing because they're too obsessed with the future kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think that could work just by itself. I don't think we need to make it like, oh, no, this was the plan the whole time in order to have Jon Snow, who didn't actually even defeat the White Walkers. It was his sister, who was not related to the Targaryens at all. So
I wonder if they're gonna feel pressured to do that.
I don't know.
And I'm like, oh, geez, like you're just stop reminding people of the show. This is the whole point, was to get away from it. But
I mean, the dream would be like if they somehow actually explain what the White Walkers are and all this stuff that they didn't do in Game of Thrones, like actually like deal with it in a great way. I mean, that would be the dream, but I don't think they can, given the limitations.
I also don't know, like, that's another thing where I'm kind of weird about like the Jon Snow spinoff. It's like, what's the end game? Where are you going with this? Is there going to be another threat?
I think.
Are you going to try to retcon?
Scrapped, yeah.
Yeah, it's like where are we going? Like, what are we? He's living behind the wall to.
Maybe he figures out the actual history behind the White Walkers that again they just forgot about in the show. Like,
but then it builds up. It's a similar issue with like Endgame, where it like, okay, well, it builds up to the real enemy. It's like, wait, so all the shit that they did at the end of the series, that wasn't the real big baddie? It was just
there's another Night King out there. Jon has to unite the White Walkers and the Night's Watch, and they have to go fight them. It's like, come on, like...
Yeah, no, that's gonna be lame.
Yeah, and honestly, Dunk and Egg, like, it's gonna have the same problem that Game of Thrones does, where it's gonna outpace the books, because George hasn't even been writing any of the Dunk and Egg for, like, 20 years.
He hasn't, yeah.
And it's like... Honestly, like, George, like, what the fuck? Why did you sell another series that you have not finished yet for development? Like, I get it. You got paid millions of dollars for this, I'm sure. But, like, you're already rich and you're old as fuck. Like, what do you need the money for? You're not doing it. You're just sitting in Santa Fe eating nachos. Like, you don't need the money. Why did you sell this series?
Well, for me, I'm more frustrated at if they do this, it's like, it's more on HBO for like, because even if you could argue that like it is on George for selling Game of Thrones before he was done with the books, HBO, it's like, HBO, you learned your lesson, right? You learned your lesson, so why not just wait till he's done with the books and then
because they want the money, and they'll make a lot of money off of it, and like HBO doesn't have. Like, they're not responsible for the artistic integrity of the Song of Ice and Fire series. They're like, if George will sell us the rights, we'll make it. We'll make a bunch of money off of it. That's their job. It's George's responsibility as the author to be like, all right, I screwed up with Game of Thrones, right? Like, I didn't have enough control. I don't know. Maybe he has more control now. If I was him and I was negotiating the rights to these other shows, I would absolutely, like... be like, no, I need to sign off on all the shit you're gonna do first. But that also takes away from his writing the books. So it's like he just needs to focus. Like he shouldn't have sold his rights to any of this stuff. He should just focus on his legacy, which is gonna come to an end sooner than later. I'm not being mean about that. He's like old. He should focus on just getting the series done and, you know, sealing his legacy as an author.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I will still be reading Winds of Winter whenever it comes out. I don't care if I'm 50 or 80 or...
We'll get it. We'll get Winds of Winter. Dream of Spring, I'm not 100% sure about, but I think... I do believe we'll get Winds of Winter. I'm excited
We shall see. We shall see.
Yeah. All right, well, that's probably it for the episode. We've been going for an hour and a half. Thank you guys for listening to this, and... stay tuned for... I mean, do you have any other final thoughts you want to leave before we end it?
Congratulations on 50 episodes. We did it.
We did it. 50 episodes. Thank you guys all for watching this. If you're somehow watching this but you're not subscribed to No One's a Critic, go do that. I have the link in the description of my of this video here. It's linked in the channels of my channel. Max got it on his channel. It's called No One's a Critic. We do this basically every 2 weeks. We talk about a bunch of TV shows and films and movies and stuff like that. So, yeah, subscribe there. There's more episodes to come. Get a No One's a Critic shirt if you want one. Get our drip. That's linked in the description too. But yeah, thank you guys all for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon.
Take care, y'all.